So what we can see here is Nearpod, and this is an instructor screen view here. Now the students are going to put in this code, and now we're going to go to the student screen. And on the student screen, they will go through, they will type in the code for the Nearpod, and then the instructor can get them started on this lesson. Now what we can do with Nearpod is we can just go through and put in standard slides, just like a regular PowerPoint. So in this case, it's going to be Glenn Hughes and I are doing this together, so Glenn's going to go through, he's going to put in his name, he's going to join the session. Now this is just a regular slide that I went through and created, and what we can do is project this on Glenn's computer screen. So it'll be up on the front of the board, it's also on Glenn's computer screen. And this is just like a standard, typical PowerPoint, anything that you would normally see. You can go through and transition, and then we can talk about active transport here. And again, this is just a normal PowerPoint slide that Glenn's seeing on his computer screen. Now we can get into a little more of the detailed features that Nearpod offers. And what we're looking at here is a draw it screen. So after we go through these slides, I can go through and ask the students and ask Glenn right now to go through the formula for photosynthesis. And I can put an arrow here, create a background. Then what I can do is ask Glenn to use the draw it or the text feature. And he can go through, use the text feature here, and he can type in his answer. And then as Glenn's going through and typing in his answer, I can see what he's doing on his computer screen and record some of that data there. Now, Glenn can also go through, and here's an example of flashcards. And I can give the class these flashcards, and they can all work on them together, work on them in small groups, or work on them individually here. And we can see that Glenn can go through and find the matching pairs to the vocabulary words that we've gone through and talked about in the lecture or whatever instruction that we've been going through and doing. Now, let's say he finishes these flashcards. It again records the data for me so I know how well Glenn's doing with the vocabulary, how many tries it's taken. And we can move on to an open-ended. What we can do is we can record the students' responses to answers as we're going through the instruction. And I can go through and ask the class here, why do the leaves change color in the fall? Now I could, ask the kids to raise their hand and do this, but the nice thing about this is I'm getting every student to participate, and I can monitor their participation. And students that I wouldn't normally hear from that are generally quiet in the class are all going to go through and participate here, and I can monitor that participation. Now, I can also go through and implement quizzes and then monitor those quizzes and see how the students are answering. So again, we can see Glenn's screen here. He's going to go through, he's going to use his pH scale that I've embedded into this Nearpod, and he can go through and answer chemistry and biology questions about pH. So he can go through and say, all right, based on our scale here, milk is going to be slightly acidic. We're going and looking at an egg. He can go through, this is above neutral, so we have slightly basic. And what this is going to do is generate a PDF for all of the scores, categorize the scores for me as the instructor, and it's also going to go through and allow me to see how students are really going through and answering these questions here. Now, what we see here is my view. So I can see exactly what Glenn got on his quiz. I can go through, and if I click on the PDF, I can see all of the data for all of the students. I can also hide the students' names if I'm projecting that on the board. Now, what I can see here is this is a draw it screen that Glenn went through and completed. So I can see what Glenn's doing as he's going through and drawing on his screen here, just on the Nearpod platform. And then I can go through and use that screen that he's gone through and created once he submits it to view what his drawing is and basically categorize that data. So I can wait for his drawing and then categorize that based on how he did. Now this is exactly what Glenn is going through and doing on his screen. He's going through and selecting the marker here, and he can tell me based on the molarity of the salt in the water and the cell, he can tell me where the water is going to move. And this is really good for me because it's allowing me to electronically save all of the students' work and then categorize that work and kind of go through and view it later on my computer screen. Now, as we continue on here, we can go through, there's all sorts of 3D models and diagrams that the students can go through and look at. So there's all sorts of student diagrams and 3D models that they can look at. So right now we're looking at the human body, and we can go into the nervous system as we go through and talk about vascular structures. One of my favorite features is the 360 view. I always like going through and looking at coral reefs because I did research on coral reefs as an undergrad. What we can see here is a coral reef, and this gives you a 360 view. And generally, when I go through and look at these 3D virtual places, we'll talk about ecology, population density, whether this is a healthy environment, a non-healthy environment, what the diversity of the organisms is. It really allows me to go through and keep the kids engaged. Now, lastly, after I have this, there's a variety of other features, but I can also embed video content, and I can make it student-paced. So we can use all of this content here, allowing the students to work with me when I give direct instruction to the class. But I can also send one of these codes home, embed a video that I go through and make, and then I can build in questions and test the students at home for when I'm doing a flip class video. So this would be one of the videos that I've gone through and created. This is just the electron transport chain because this was what we've covered most recently. And what I can do is embed this in a Nearpod, have the students watch the video, and then I can embed all of those activities after the video for them to complete. And instead of giving them a traditional worksheet for homework, I can give them this Nearpod code and then give them this virtual experience for really getting some of the instruction out of the way before they come into class, so that way we can go through and complete a laboratory, have a discussion, or have an engaging lesson in class.